Welcome to this episode of the Good Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Good. My guest for this episode is Hal Elrod, who's on a mission to elevate the consciousness of humanity one person at a time. He is also the best-selling author of several books, including The Miracle Equation and The Miracle Morning, which has sold over 2 million copies. In this engaging episode, we will explore the art of kickstarting and wrapping up your day effectively, drawing on insights from Hal Elrod's proven method. Discover 6 powerful practices embraced by top achievers, cleverly presented as acrostics, savers for mornings and slumbers for evenings. Uncover the secrets of a successful day and a restful night, all encapsulated in these transformative routines. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast, where we engage with esteemed thought leaders and explore research-backed strategies and techniques that empower leaders at every level to achieve meaningful results that drive lasting change. Welcome to the program, Hal.
Charles, I am grateful to be here, and this is going to be a lot of fun. And let's help people. Anybody listening?
Let's move to the Miracle Morning, because that was really born out of another rock bottom in your life, which was the 2008 financial crisis. That really impacted you in a negative way financially and affected your emotional state. You became quite depressed, and you stated it was worse than your car accident. But there was a run that changed your life.
Yeah, so 2008, the U.S. economy crashed. I imagine everybody listening was around during that time, or at least most of us. And I was in denial at that point because I was I am an eternal optimist, which can have its downsides. I've become much more of a realist after all the crap I've gone through. But back then it was like, I'm not worried about the economy. I create my own economy. I take total responsibility, right? Well, in a 6-month period, shortly after me, telling a friend, I'm not afraid, I create my own economy, I lost over half of my coaching clients. Therefore, I lost over half of my income. Well, I couldn't pay my bills off less than half of my income. So I had to stop paying my mortgage. The bank foreclosed on my house. I went from being debt-free to having $52,000 in credit card debt in 6 months, personal credit card debt. I went from almost an 800 credit score down to 512, I think. And I just got depressed, man. I was like, can't change it, 5-minute rule. But I'm like, I feel like I'm in quicksand. I'm in this downward spiral, and I don't know what to do. And a friend of mine suggested I go for that run that you mentioned. And I heard a Jim Rohn quote. Man, Jim Rohn, God rest his soul, has made a huge impact in my life, and we've never even met. But Jim Rohn, and I know I speak for millions of people when I say that, but Jim Rohn said, on this run, I was listening to an audio, and I heard him say, your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development. And Charles, it just hit me in that moment, and I quantified it. I went, okay, wait a minute. If my level of success in every area of my life, not just your business or financial success, but your success in your marriage, your health, your happiness, on and on a scale of 1 to 10, if we're measuring our desired level of success in every area of life, I would say we all want a 10. I have never met anyone that's like, I don't want to be too happy. I don't want to be too financially abundant. No. On a scale of 1 to 10, I want to be as happy and healthy and wealthy and abundant and in love as I can be. Okay, but if Jim is correct and my level of success, that level 10 that I want, is rarely going to exceed my level of personal development, in other words, who I'm becoming each day, well, then that begs the question, what's my level of personal development? Because if I want level 10 success, I need to get to a level 10. And at that time in my life in 2008, I was a mess. I was in desperation mode. I was at like a 2 or a 3 on the personal development scale. And if anybody's looking at the screen here, just imagine I've got 2 hands, one at a 10, one at a 2, and I'm crossing them one on top of the other. There's a big gap. And I believe that's the real issue for 95% of our society in developed world, in America. Let's just say here where I live. I can't speak for other countries, but we all want level 10 success. But very few people have a daily personal development ritual that enables them to become the level 10 person that they need to be, the version of themselves that's capable of achieving the levels of success they want. And so that was my light bulb moment. I went, I need to go figure out what the world's most successful people do for personal development. I'm going to assemble not just 1 or 2, but the best practices that I can find. There ended up being 6 of them, which are now known as the SAVERS. It's an acronym that's to make it so these 6 practices are memorable and you can just go through them every morning. Silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, scribing, SAVERS. And I woke up the next morning. I didn't know how to meditate. I didn't know how to visualize. It's been about an hour the night before Googling how to do these things. But the theory was, if I do the 6 most timeless, proven personal development practices that the world's most successful people have sworn by for centuries, I thought that should theoretically take me from a level 2 or 3 in terms of my personal development to a 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 as quickly as humanly possible. And so I woke up the next morning. I did all 6 practices. I fumbled my way through them. My meditation was not going well for me, but I was committed. I'm like, I'm going to do this ritual for at least 30 days and see what happens. And I was thinking that if I do this for a year, I should be able to turn my financial situation around and turn my life around. Charles, in less than 2 months of practicing what became the Miracle Morning, it wasn't called that on day 1, I more than doubled my income. And I want everyone to hear that. This was at the height of the 2008 Great Recession. The economy was tanking. The news every day induced fear. But I stopped watching the news. And even though the economy got worse, day by day, morning by morning, I got better and better and better and more confident and more capable and more productive. And within 2 months, I doubled my income. I went from being in the worst shape of my life to committing to train for and run a 52-mile ultra marathon, 2 consecutive marathons without stopping. Just you run 52 consecutive miles. I had never run before, but my Miracle Morning had me so motivated and thinking so. Basically, miracle equation was in full effect. Like, what's possible? What if I ran a marathon? I'm like, no, there's a double. I could run a double marathon. And I hated running. So I thought, who would I have to become to achieve that goal? And my depression went away, not in 2 months, but it started fading on day 1 because I went from feeling hopeless to feeling hopeful that if I do this every day, it's only a matter of time before I turn my life around. And the last thing I'll say on this, and then we can go wherever you want, Charles, but I remember the moment. I can picture it in my house. I signed up 2 coaching clients that day, and that officially had put me at more than double my income from 2 months prior. I ran to go tell my wife. She was folding laundry in our bedroom. And I said, sweetheart, I just signed on 2 more coaching clients. And she had no context. She just went, great, congratulations. I know we need money. I said, no, you don't understand. We have officially doubled our income since I started that morning routine 2 months ago. I said, talk about a miracle. And she goes, without skipping a beat, Charles, she goes, it's your Miracle Morning. I go, yeah, I like that, Miracle Morning. And I started writing it down on my schedule. And then I taught it to my coaching clients. Most of them resisted, saying I'm not a morning person. And then 2 weeks later, 13 out of 14 came to the next call and said, Hal, oh my gosh, I'm meditating every day. I'm journaling every day. I'm doing affirmations. I'm having the best 2 weeks in my sales career. I'm reading again. I'm training. It was just that was when I went, wait a minute. If this Miracle Morning thing worked for me and I wasn't a morning person and it worked for 13 out of 14 of my coaching clients, I have a responsibility to share this with the world. And then 3 years later, the book was written. 4 years after that, the movie came out. 5 years after that, the Miracle Morning app came out, and now there's a schools program. I mean, it's just, we're trying to reach billions of people with this message. And so, thank you again for having me on, man, because this is helping with the mission. I appreciate it.
I love it. I love the Savers model. It's helped me out. Like you said, it's helped countless millions out as well to live a life to their true potential. It's highly customizable. You can do it as little as 6 minutes up to an hour each day. You kind of gave an overview of the model. I'd like to just kind of have a little more of a deep dive into 3 aspects, because although they're common practices, like the first one, S, silence, right? Everyone knows meditation, prayer, gratitude, breath work helps. But I love how you operationalize it and make it more effective by saying, not just any meditation, but that emotional optimization meditation practice. You want to choose your optimal emotional state, focus on your breath to focus on your body in the present moment, and then fill your mind with thoughts that reaffirm that state instead of trying to empty your mind.
Yeah. And I will say that there are countless forms of meditation, and I don't believe this is one right or wrong. This just for me is my favorite. And you mentioned, the first S in Savers is silence, breath work, gratitude, prayer, meditation, right? There's a buffet of options to choose from. For me, I start that emotional optimization meditation by following my breath, by feeling grateful, by thanking God, right? So as I'm starting my silence, I am getting in a really calm, peaceful state. Then, usually I will have looked at my to-do list for the, or not my to-do list, my schedule for the day. And before I do this, so I know what I need to do that day. And I'll ask myself, what is the optimal mental and or emotional state that I need to cultivate this morning so that I can be as effective as possible in what's on my agenda for today? And that varies. If I have a keynote speech in front of 5,000 people at a conference, right? I want to get in a place of like connection and confidence, and right, I want to prime myself for that experience. If it's Saturday morning and my kids are going to be out and up in an hour, I want to get in a state of fun and playfulness. And so I'm using this emotional optimization to rehearse, to cultivate, to hardwire that emotional state in my nervous system. Give you another example. If anybody is married, if you've ever been in a fight with your spouse before bed and you didn't follow the perfect plan, which is never go to bed angry, right? We try to do that, but sometimes you're like, I don't want to even make up with you. I'm going to bed. Well, if I had this happen a few months ago where I woke up in the morning, her and I had an argument the night before, and we went to bed upset, and I woke up feeling agitated with reliving that argument. And I know that doesn't serve me. If when she comes out of the bedroom, I glare at her, that doesn't serve the marriage or the goals or the purpose that we have, right? And so I used emotional optimization meditation to rehearse, to cultivate a loving state. I went through the thoughts about my wife. Why am I grateful for? What do I love about her? What does she bring to my life? Why is she such an amazing partner? And there were a million reasons, right? Or, there were a lot of reasons. A lot more reasons than why I was mad at her from the night before. There was only one or two from like, this, she did that or didn't do that. And so the reasons, the compelling, thoughtful, gratitude inducing, thoughts of my wife, there was far more. And so I used those. And then I set my timer. Once I got into that optimal emotional state, I set my timer for 5 minutes. And I just stayed in that state. I almost say, as opposed to meditate, it's like marinate. I was marinating, thinking those loving thoughts, smiling, picturing my wife. And then that morning when she woke up, I went into the bedroom and I greeted her with this love and this empathy and forgiveness and everything I had emotionally, meditated on that morning. And she's glaring at me. And it occurred to me, because she doesn't do this practice, not to throw my wife under the bus, like she's a night owl and she's productive in the evening. But I go, man, this isn't fair. I just spent, my morning preparing to greet you this loving way, and you waited to the last minute, you woke up. And by the way, without going off on a tangent, Charles, that's the reason for the miracle morning. You either wake up at the last minute and show up to your day in a default, possibly reactive, possibly negative mental and emotional state that does not serve you, and you're reactive all day long. You're in fight or flight. You're in your sympathetic nervous system. Or you do a miracle morning, and it might only take, you can do a 6-minute miracle morning, a 30-minute miracle morning, a 60-minute miracle morning, whatever works for you. But you're using those 6 to 60 minutes to cultivate an optimal mental and emotional state so you can be at your best throughout the day in your work, with your family, and for yourself.
Absolutely. And this also helps you with the C part of the ABC of living a miracle life, is going through this meditative practice and optimizing your meditative state, or the state that you really want to pursue throughout the day. The second letter in Savers, which I've heard is your favorite, it's the affirmations. And there's a lot of myths around it, right? I mean, I can remember, and I'm probably dating myself, the Saturday Night Live skit, and all of these that, you just have to say it, and somehow the universe is going to come together and bring you these things. And you said that's not realistic. That's not productive. You have to affirm what you're committed to. You have to affirm why it's important to you. And then most importantly, perhaps you have to affirm which actions you're going to take and when.
Yeah, the affirmations, the way we've been taught, are goofy. Yeah, we've been taught that they're magical, and they'll just, just like a vision board. You just make it and forget it, and then everything magically appears in your life. So I think the two primary challenges with affirmations are, number one, we're taught to affirm something that is not yet true for us, and as if it were true. And an example, let's say you're struggling financially, but you want to be a millionaire. Some well-meaning self-help guru might have told you, just affirm, I am a millionaire. Right? But your subconscious mind, when you say that, if it's not true for you, then you go, your subconscious goes, no, you're not. And you're creating an unnecessary internal conflict within yourself. The second problem with affirmations is we're taught to affirm some magical result independent of any effort. So we've all heard this one before. I am a money magnet. Money flows to me effortlessly and in abundance, right? Go talk to any wealthy person. That's not how they became wealthy, because money flowed to them because they were magnetic, right? That might make you feel better in the moment, but it might be counterproductive because you're going to assume that money is going to magically show up. And so you ran through, in the book, I walked you through how to create affirmations following those 3 steps. Number 1, affirm what you're committed to. Number 2, affirm why it's a must for you. And number 3, affirm which actions you'll take and when. And then apply that formula to each of your goals in your life. And you can apply it to each of your roles in your life. So you might have a financial goal and you follow what you're committed to, why it's a must, and what you're going to do to get there. You might have a role as a spouse or as a parent. Okay, well, what are you committed to as a parent to your children? Why is that a must for you? And which actions will you take and when to ensure that you fulfill that commitment? And now you're using affirmations that are rooted in truth, that are practical, actionable, and results oriented.
The next one is visualization. Like you mentioned, vision boards are common, but what I love about your approach is you need to visualize the outcome with clarity, in detail, with those senses. But you also need to visualize, which I love this, exactly what you need to do today to make progress toward your ideal outcome, which is going to help with procrastination and hopefully get you in that state of wanting to generate the right feelings to achieve those goals.
Yeah, here's a good way to help sum it up for people, and this was helpful for me. Visualization is the saver that I struggled with the most for years. And then doing research, I realized, oh, it's mental rehearsal. It's not that I'm visualizing, the dream life and hoping it's going to come true, which is kind of where I was left. And a lot of people get disenchanted with visualization. It was, I'm going to visualize the dream life so that I can generate emotion that'll pull me toward doing the things today that will get me there. But more importantly, I'm going to mentally rehearse those things I need to do today while putting myself in a peak mental and emotional state. It's what athletes do. I didn't invent this mental rehearsal. It's what the world's greatest athletes mentally rehearse themselves performing at their best, and they go through the motions in their mind and in their body to go through the motions. And then when they step on the court or on the field, they've already been there and done that. They rehearsed it. And now they're far more likely to do it in real time. And it's not just for athletes. We can apply that to whatever things we need to do in our life today. And especially the things that we inherently resist. Like when I was a salesperson, like most salespeople, I was like, I didn't want to get on the phone. And when 8 a.m. rolled around or 5, whenever my phone time rolled around, I'd find myself procrastinating, and I would find myself twiddling my thumbs and saying, yeah, I'll just do it tomorrow. It's okay. But then I started mentally rehearsing doing the thing in a peak state so that when it was actually time to get on the phone, I did what I rehearsed. If you don't rehearse it, you're going to give into your default emotional state, which is like, I don't feel like it, so I'm not going to do it, versus, no, I do feel like it because this morning I mentally rehearsed doing it in an emotional state that was exciting and compelling and energizing. So now that it's time to do it, I'm just going to tap into that emotional state and take the action that I need to take.
Great stuff. Well, we won't have time to go through the other 3, but just real quick, since you already alluded to them, E is for exercise. The benefits of morning exercise are too significant to ignore. It helps circulate blood, oxygen, boost your energy, your cognitive functions, enabling you to think better throughout the day. So don't discount morning exercise. R is for reading. The one thing I love about this, we're a learning organization, and I hear this a lot from leaders. I read this one book. I don't remember anything that I read. I couldn't apply it. And you mentioned in the book, which I think is really an appropriate piece of advice here, is rarely can we read a book once and internalize the value contained with it. The first read merely exposes us to the ideas of the book, but achieving mastery requires repetition, exposing ourselves to these ideas, strategies, and techniques repeatedly. And then the final S is for scribing. That's journaling. A lot of talk has been about that, about how effective that is. The clearest thinkers are the ones that write all the time, right? So you can document your insights, your breakthroughs, your successes and lessons, as well as not discounting or remembering all those opportunities for growth and improvement that you're going to likely forget if it's not documented somewhere. Anything you want to add for those final three before we move into our final piece about the miracle evening?
Yeah, no, I'll paraphrase Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad. He has read The Miracle Morning at least 3 times that I know of. And, he wrote one of the best-selling books of all time in Rich Dad Poor Dad. And so I was blown away when his assistant emailed me and said he wanted to interview me on his Rich Dad radio show. This was years ago. But he said it best. At the very end of the interview, he said, "Hal, you named the book correctly by calling it The Miracle Morning." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because," he said, "every successful person on the planet before you wrote this book, they practice at least one or two of the savers, maybe three at the most." He said, "I was doing three of them." He said, "But I've never met anyone that did all six of these ancient best practices. However, any one of the savers is a life-changing practice." He said, "But my personal experience since I started doing the Miracle Morning in all six of them is that you experience miracles in your life." He said, "I'm experiencing miracles in my health, miracles in my marriage, and miracles in my business, all because of the savers. That's why you named the book correctly." So that to me is a nice way to wrap a bow on how powerful the savers are for people.
What I love about the new chapter in your latest edition, right, is because success for each day starts the night before. And not many people look at their evening routines. They just assume that it starts in the morning. But if you're sleep deprived, if you're without energy, if you're not feeling well, it's not going to set the right intention to begin the day. So the acronym you give for the miracle evening routine is SLUMBERs, which is great. Perhaps you can just give us a brief overview of those. I'd like to just unpack just one of those before we end our conversation today.
Stop eating 3 to 4 hours before bedtime, because that's how long it takes to fully digest a meal. And very often when you wake up in the morning feeling like you were hit by a truck, right? That old expression, it's because you ate too late and your body was digesting food all night long. And digesting food is one of the most energy draining processes that we go through. The L in slumbers is let go of stressful thoughts and emotions. And that may be the most important piece, is that we often are very undisciplined in our thinking before bed. And we think about things that cause us stress, which raises our cortisol, which is counterproductive to sleep. The U in slumbers is for use sleep supplements as needed. And in the book, I just said I'd be remiss if I left these out. Like these are the supplements that I take every night, and so I'm going to share those with you as well. The M in slumbers is for map out your next day, and I talk about how utilizing technology to have your day mapped out in advance by using recurring calendar appointments, right? So you can either map it out by hand, or you can. For me, 95% of my calendar is already decided, weeks in advance. The B in slumbers is for boycott blue light, which, pretty self-explanatory, but just talking about why we need to not look at our phones or any screens, and even lower the lights in our bedroom, especially if they're fluorescent lights. The E is empower yourself with bedtime affirmations. And think about this. The first thought you have in the morning is almost always whatever the last thought you dwelled on as you fell asleep. And so I have bedtime affirmations that I personally use, that I included in the book, that you can read before you go to bed. The R is for read a book that makes you feel good. So when I read books, I always underline, circle, so that I can reread them, Charles, without having to reread the entire book. I only reread my highlights that I've underlined. And what ends up happening is I keep the books that elevate my consciousness, that make me feel good, that make me feel happy, that make me feel at peace. All of the books I've already read, they stay in my bedside table. There's about 12 of them. And when I want to read before bed, I pull out one of those books. Now I'm not burdening myself with having to, I've got to learn something new that I've never been exposed to. No, I've already read this book. This is an easy, low stress, I just get to read my underlines, the things I've deemed important enough to read again. And then the final S in slumbers, sleep like a baby. And I talk about it in two different contexts. One is that, when you're a baby, you have no worries, you have no thoughts. You're a pure, unjaded state of consciousness. And so I talk about getting back into that state as you drift off to sleep, feeling like you're in a state of bliss, so that you wake up feeling in that same state.
So, and I love the L part, the let go of stressful thoughts and feelings, because I agree with you. That could perhaps be the most important, because your only objective at bedtime, you state, is to prepare your mind and body for blissful sleep. That's it. So all thoughts, actions should be in alignment with that singular objective. And how do you get in that objective, or how do you do that? Through affirmations, through meditation, whatever works for you, but realizing that you need to let go of those stressful thoughts for you to have a good night's sleep where you feel rejuvenated.
Yeah, and it's about replacing them with grateful thoughts. I mean, that's the easiest thing to do, right? Like they say, you don't usually get rid of something, you replace it with something else, you know? And so we have a pattern, right? You all have a pattern. We have a pattern of what you think about before bed typically, right? Or what types of things you allow yourself to think about. And or if you watch the news before bed and then that's like your habit, like you got to stop doing that, right? Boycott the blue light and also boycott the bad news, because those are going to really affect your sleep. So yeah, you said it well, Charles. As I talked about in the book, we have to have the discipline to realize that we have a singular objective at bedtime, and that is to prepare our mind, body, emotions, and spirit for peaceful, blissful, restful sleep. And so in the book, I kind of walk you through how do you flip that switch and let go of those stressful thoughts.
Great acronym. Love it, because really success each day starts the night before. So I love that you included that in your new version of the book. Before we end today's episode, remind our listeners, what's the first thing you would recommend them doing to living a life of hopefully realizing their potential?
I mean, I really believe one of my kind of taglines of the Miracle Morning is wake up to your full potential. And if there was something that I thought was more effective than having a morning, personal development ritual, that's what I would be sharing with people. My life's work is sharing the Miracle Morning. And it isn't the Miracle Morning. Robin Sharma's got the 5 a.m. club. Tony Robbins has the Hour of Power. Like, you don't have to do the Miracle Morning. It can be your own flavor. You can make it up. The point is, how you start your day sets the tone, the context, and the direction for how you live the day, who you're able to be throughout the day. So it all falls back on how you start the day and your morning routine or lack thereof. So to me, that's the number one key is wake up, ideally 30 minutes earlier. If that feels like too big of a task, you can go, 10 or 15 minutes earlier and start by doing at least one of the savers. You don't have to do all 6, but you do at least one of them.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Hal. Remind our listeners how they can get in contact with you and learn more about your work.
MiracleMorning.com is the hub for everything. You can order the Miracle Morning book from there. It'll redirect you to Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com. But you can also watch the Miracle Morning movie for free at MiracleMorning.com. The movie's free. You can also download the Miracle Morning app for the iPhone or Android phone. That also is a free app with a premium option. Yeah, so there's a lot of free resources, but everything is available at MiracleMorning.com.
I hope this episode has provided you with valuable insights. If it has, I ask you to share it with someone who would also benefit from it. If you've been enjoying and gaining knowledge from this podcast, then subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast and additional learning resources. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify and leave up to a 5-star review.